welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and I am joined by the author of an absolutely delightful, insightful, funny, devastating at times, really all around interesting, beautiful, good read. And I am so excited to talk about it. So, welcome to the show. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Hi, I am Rebecca Van Laer, the author of most recently Cat, the 99th volume in Bloomsbury's Object Lessons series.
Absolutely beautiful. As I said, it's just such a good read, especially for someone as myself, who is a lifetime, even one might say, lover of cats. Uh, I'd love to know more about it, but first, I'd like to know more about your journey as a writer and your other work, perhaps. I know you've also written a novella.
Yes. So I have a PhD, which has led me in a kind of cross-genre or multi-genre direction as a writer. So my first book, How to Adjust to the Dark, is about a woman looking back on the poetry from her 20s. So it is basically a novella, a fictional narrative, where the narrator close reads her own poetry and narrates the events around them to confront her beliefs that falling in love and making art are supposed to hurt. So it was fun to get to do close reading on the page in that book. And in Cat, it's not fiction. I made the leap into nonfiction, but I think that it shares a similar affinity for research and analysis, even though the main thing that I'm doing is telling the story of 2 years of my own life with my partner and our cats.
I've also, in addition to cats, I'm a longtime fan of the Object Lessons series. And I'm curious about whether was the book conceived specifically for that series, or was it something that you were developing that then later seemed like a good fit?
I have been a fan of the series for a long time as well. And this was actually my second pitch to them. When I was in graduate school, I pitched a book on crystal, which would have been terrible. So I didn't originally know this was an object lesson book simply because I didn't originally know that it was going to be nonfiction. It actually started out as a short story, then I then thought might become a novel or novella. But over time, it became clear to me that I didn't need to keep obfuscating the fact that I was writing about my real cats. And also that it was going to be a short book because while I told you I could talk all day about cats, I don't know if I could write 90,000 words about my cats without really trying to add in some drama that has not happened and that did not come to mind. So at a certain point, I decided to pitch it to Bloomsbury, see if they said yes, and take it from there. And because they did, it became the book that it is.
Nice. Yeah, something that I love about the series too is that the essays are really unique in that they sort of dabble in various genres and structures in order to examine an object. And I love thinking about a cat as an object. It's really funny and from a variety of angles. And so you've talked a little bit about how there is some personal narrative here about your own cats, Toby and Gus, but there's also some philosophy and cultural criticism. So I'm curious about perhaps conceiving of and ordering the chapters or essays that sort of make up the book. I'm curious about if you had ideas for discrete essays or if it was written as a singular narrative. I hope that question makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. When I put together the proposal, I had 10,000 words of writing that were kind of all over the place. However, 28,000 words is the length of the whole book. So I was lucky that I was able to know what a few of the more narrative chapters would be. At the same time, I wanted each chapter to have a distinct focus, and I thought that that would help me as a writer to flesh it out and also help the book in the series where there are so many academics writing just more straightforwardly informational or theoretical volumes that readers who are coming to it would want to come away with some facts and thinking. So I tried to blend them, thinking about how I could move through this 2 year period of my life, but cover topics that stood out to me as important within the field of wildcat analysis, uh, making a joke with wild psychoanalysis. But yeah, so Cats with Jobs was something that I knew I wanted to talk about because Lee Claire LeBerg's Marks for Cats is such a wonderful volume. And also, I'm obsessed with Cats with Jobs, the Instagram and Twitter account. I knew that cats versus dogs had to be a chapter because it is an age-old rivalry, and no book would be complete without addressing it. So I moved, but tried to think about how to move between my linear narrative and subjects. And the way that I laid it out in the proposal ended up actually being more or less the way that I was able to write it, which was a relief.
Hmm. Did juxtaposing your personal narrative and sort of like your cat memoir with the cultural analysis you do, did it provide any new insights into your experience of cat ownership or cohab not, well, you do complicate ownership, so let's take that back immediately. But your experience with cats, like was there anything that you came away knowing that you feel like you didn't know before?
Oh, I learned so much writing this book that I did not know. I knew absolutely nothing really about the history of domestication, the fact that all domestic cats come from one particular species of wild cat. I didn't know that it is actually true that cats are bad at rodent control. And I also didn't know the full breadth of the way that other writers have considered them in their own memoirs. So I definitely learned a lot. And as you said, I end up troubling the idea of ownership. I don't know if that's something that I set out to do, but it kept coming up in my research, our attempts to control the cat and also what the ethics of owning another animal are. So there were certain quandaries and even moral qualms that I began to confront more head on than I have in my also lifelong love of cats. And luckily, at the end of it, I still feel like, okay, I'm definitely going to have cats, which is something that people have asked me. I think I'll have cats forever. I think at the same time, it's good to fully confront those things and really think about, okay, what does it mean that I'm neutering this creature and inviting it into my home to eat a bunch of factory farmed meat? And how do I make sense of that?
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I came away with a lot of really interesting questions and sort of viewing my own relationship with my own cats, Robin and Samantha, through a new lens. It also made me flash back to grad school because I until I was reading your book, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that Lacan essay where he gets embarrassed about being naked in front of his cat. And that's so interesting. Like and it did make me think about, how I tend to relate to them. I feel like I don't feel adult enough to be their owner or their parent. So maybe it's like more roommate or just people crashing in this house with me. Like
Yeah, I totally know what you mean about not feeling adult enough. Like, oh, I'm responsible for your whole being and mortality and fate. What? I think of myself as a cat friend, as a cat roommate, cat guardian. Definitely not a cat parent
yeah.
primarily.
So one part that I did really enjoy was sort of these glimpses into other people's versions of cat cohabitation, let's call it at this point, that I thought were sort of unique and made up within like my own domestic sphere but that now seem more universal. One, for instance, was that it was really heartening for me to learn that like other people have like not in fact just one name for their cat, but like dozens of them. Like I have a literal phone note where there are, I think, 35 names for one of our cats right now. And to get back to the idea of cat as object, there's something there's an interesting balance there, I feel like, about like us projecting on them, but also them expressing themselves in like really interesting ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really at the heart of the book. And some people have phrased it as a craft question, just how do you write about your cats? And the reality is that there's, only a certain number of facts about your cat. So, my cat Gus is 15 years old. He has one blue eye and one green eye. He purrs a lot. He doesn't like everyone, but he really likes my partner, Steven. Aside from that, it's all kind of made up. And made up is maybe the wrong word for it. It's made up to the extent that our feelings about the people in our lives might be made up too. We're but we are reading his mind and inferring so much. And when people who don't know Gus meet Gus, they have a totally different impression of him. I have a moment in my book where someone called him a hipster cat, and I was, you don't get Gus at all. Like he's not too cool for school. He's not above it all. He's just in his own world as this kind of magical being and creature. And that's how I make sense of him. But again, that's all projection. So figuring out how to make them those characters based on both what they really are like and also what they really do day to day, when what they do is the same thing over and over and over again,
Yes.
but to also make them interesting to the reader. It involves that balance, and as you say, it involves so much lore. There's all the nicknames and kind of like a whole vocabulary that we have for these cats that makes no sense to anyone else. But I think that all pet owners are always developing in their private ways.
Yes,
Pet
100%.
people, pet people.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, we're constantly writing fan fiction about about the cats.
Yes, that's the simplest way of putting it. That
Yeah.
it's fan fiction. Yeah.
Something that I also really love is there's a early on there's a quote. I think it's in the dog versus cat chapter about dog people wishing that their dogs were human and cat people wanting to be cats. And that is 100% true in my case. I remember like way back when I first got my cat and had been living with him for like maybe 2 years, like I figured out it was time to switch jobs because I started to like resent him, for not having
Uh,
to go to work. I'm like,
yeah.
I am jealous of you. Like I need to, I
Yep.
need to work this out. So I'd love if you could talk a little bit more maybe about like the cats and work issue because like we as you talked about cats with jobs is like one of the best sort of like manifestations of cat memes. But also like there's a little bit of like cats as like resistance and anti-work sentiment going on there too.
Yeah. So Marx for Cats kind of makes the argument that cats have been figures that emerge at moments of economic upheaval, and that in her analysis, they emerge both as anti-work figures, but sometimes as pro-work figures. The monarchy, and it is the Louis the Eighth, the lion, and then apparently Ayn Rand was like a really big fan of cats. That was a really good cat research, and it was because of their complete independence that the libertarianism appealed to her, and she was an early donor to cat fancy. So they have this long history of being kind of political images that a little bit slice both ways, but that I tend to, and I think Laer tends to think, fall on the side of being anti-work and rebellious, especially the house cat versus the big cat, let's say. So I think we have this collective history and knowledge of it that is in the back of our heads, even if we haven't kind of internalized that history. But then beyond that, they're actually just the cats who live in our houses. And if you have a dog or have a friend who has a dog, you know that they want to please. And you know that the cat does not. Like, even the friendliest, cuddliest, nicest, even neediest cat in the world doesn't really feel shame if the cat does something bad. In fact, it often does bad stuff on purpose. So this independence and this rebelliousness, I think, is what makes them such good anti-work mascots. And then when you add to that finding out, oh, okay, they're not even good at controlling rodent populations, and the Romans already had ferrets who were really good at it. They did not need cats. We have rat terriers that we train for this. They're much better at the job, so no one needs cats. And once you realize that they're unique from all the other species that we surround ourselves with in that way, then you kind of start to think, they have it all figured out. Um, like they're getting their needs met. Well, that's not true for the species as a whole. We are in a feral cat crisis, really, nation and worldwide. But the ones who are domestic, and through the history of domestication, cats in general have figured out how to occupy a unique space in relationship to humans, as opposed to our other domestic creatures and commensals, let's say.
Yeah. It feels half like they've conned us into, thinking that they are useful to have around. And it also feels like it's half us justifying keeping them around. Like it's not just because they're cute and fluffy, like, they do jobs, they're useful.
Yeah. And people who don't like cats often say, I don't see the point. And, making an argument like, okay, well, just actually being cute and kind of nice is enough. I guess some people don't agree with that. But people who love cats, they have to agree with that. That just being cute and sometimes nice is all that you really want in another creature.
Oh, 100%. Like, what is that? The William Morris quote, anything in your house should be either beautiful or useful. At bare minimum, they're
Mm,
they're achieving half of that. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So what is on the horizon for you? Are you writing anything right now?
I am ping-ponging around several projects, and I was concurrently working on two different novels while I wrote this book. My attention kept coming back to it, Cat, for several reasons. One just being that it came from a really genuine place of liking to think about my cats. And even as I was working on another novel concurrently with my cat book, it was always a pleasure to go back to the cat book, which I was contractually obligated to do. So that being said, um, one of them is kind of on pause, and the other one originally had some of the cat material in it. It's kind of a little domestic novel that originally started out with a rat infestation, but that got cribbed from fiction. Well, first from reality for fiction, then from fiction for nonfiction, and now the novel needs a new opening and a new frame.
Well, I'm very, very curious about what that will be and how you will fix that quandary for yourself. So happy writing and Godspeed to you. And thank you for taking
Thank you
the
so
time out
much.
to talk to us. Um, Listeners, please check out Cat. It is absolutely delightful as we head into the holiday season. I think it is, at the risk of being too obvious, a really good gift for the cat lovers in your life. So it's a perfect time to pick it up for yourself or anybody that you know who has a cat at home. You can get it at your favorite library or bookstore or website. Do you have a bookstore that you like to send people to?
My local bookstore is Rough Draft Barn Books, and you can also order from them online. But I think ordering it from any indie bookstore near you or bookshop.org is a wonderful way to support small or smaller businesses this holiday season.
Excellent advice. Okay, thank you again. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. It is now time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.